Is President Ibrahim Traore a dictator? Well, in recent times, this is the term that Western media has begun to associate with the Burkinabe leader. And the reason is because Traore has taken several actions that seem to be the opposite of what the West feels is right. In fact, one of his most recent actions has sent the West on an uproar, and they are talking about human rights abuse. But what exactly did he do? Well, last week, it was revealed that Traore's government planned to reinstate the death penalty. As you can imagine, every Western media has carried the news, including Human Rights Watch, with all of them saying that it's an abuse of human rights. But the most important question is, why is Traore considering reinstating the death penalty? What does he hope to achieve? And does this make him a dictator? Let's find out. Burkina Faso once operated the death penalty, but it was eventually abolished from the Burkinabe Penal Code in 2018. The last executions to have happened in Burkina Faso was carried out in September 1988 by the administration of former President Blaise Compaoré. This execution resulted in the death of 4 Burkinabe politicians who were accused of orchestrating a coup against Compaoré. The politicians include the Defense Minister, Jean-Baptiste Boucari, the Minister of Economic Promotion, Henri Zongo, and 2 unidentified men. However, under President Traore's administration, there are hints that the death penalty would be reinstated. Although there is currently no timeline for when it would be reinstated, it was revealed that the government is currently discussing the restoration of the death penalty before making a proposal to the Transitional Legislative Assembly for adoption. The Burkinabe Minister of Justice, Minister Edaso Rodriguez Bayala, confirmed this when he said that the issue of the death penalty is being discussed and will be implemented in a new criminal code to follow the vision and instructions of the head of state, Captain Ibrahim Traore. So the question is, why will a leader like Traore consider establishing the death penalty? Well, firstly, according to judicial and civil society sources in Burkina Faso, Traore plans to apply the death penalty to terrorism-related crimes. As you know, Burkina Faso has been dealing with insecurity and terrorism for a long time, perpetuated by Islamic jihadist groups. This has led to the death of thousands of people, with many more displaced and injured. And the president has been hard at work trying to combat this crisis, which external militaries such as France could not solve. So the death penalty is simply another way of combating the insecurity and terrorism in Burkina Faso. This means that anyone caught, including Burkinabe citizens involved in terrorism acts, will be subjected to the death penalty. In addition to this, President Traore has been faced with opposition from every side since he took over power in Burkina Faso. If you recall, Traore has experienced more than 10 coups since he became president, and most of the coups were orchestrated with traitors in the military and even civilians. The 10th coup, for instance, was orchestrated by the former military junta of Burkina Faso, Paul-Henri Damiba. Interestingly, this man is currently in exile in Togo. But it was from Togo that he orchestrated the wicked plot together with some high-profile individuals in Burkina Faso to overthrow Traore. At the time it occurred, it was revealed that the plan involved collaborating with insurgents and terrorists to launch attacks against the government and civilians. The popular Bachalogo incidents, which claimed hundreds of civilian lives and soldiers, was part of the plot. All of this was to weaken the leadership of Traore and make it seem as if he was not competent enough to lead Burkina Faso. Thankfully, some of those involved were caught and the plot was stopped. In this situation, these individuals involved in Jaude plot certainly deserve the death penalty. So, introducing the death penalty will serve as a deterrent for any Burkinabe citizen who wants to get involved in any destabilization plot. However, the West, which believes in democracy, freedom of speech, and justice, has demanded that Traore drop the idea of reinstating the death penalty. In fact, Human Rights Watch recently released an article where it wrote, "Burkina Faso has genuine security concerns but should recognize the death penalty's inherent cruelty and reject any plans to reinstate it." But our question is, how is it any of their concern? These people have called Traore a dictator, and according to the dictionary, a dictator is someone who holds absolute power. But if the dictator is leading the nation on the right path, doesn't that count for something? It certainly does. Supposing Traore was one of those African leaders who are known for their corruption and luxury lifestyle at the expense of those citizens, then introducing the death penalty will certainly be a problem. However, since he came to power, Traore has proven that he is very different from the usual type of African leaders we know. His entire focus and priority is to see Burkina Faso safe again and achieve self-sufficiency in every aspect. How can a leader like this be termed a dictator? Well, as we said earlier, whenever a leader or a country does something that goes against what the West believes is right, that leader is automatically termed a dictator. Interestingly, introducing the death penalty is not the only action Traore has taken that has made the West concerned. Now remember that Burkina Faso recently bought an aircraft. In the video we made about this topic, we revealed that it was the first time since independence for Burkina Faso to ever own an aircraft. Imagine that. None of the previous presidents ever thought that it was necessary for the country to own its own national aircraft. And, since independence, Burkina Faso has been renting aircraft from the West to operate their national airline. However, Traore, who believes in the sovereignty of his country, felt that it didn't make sense that a whole country does not possess even one aircraft. So, he decided to buy one, calling it Air Burkina. Interestingly, when he wanted to buy, he bought from China and not the West. Now, the aircraft was brought to Burkina Faso, and of course, it needed to be tested. Instead of calling aeronautics mechanics from outside the country, Traore decided to use local Burkinabe aeronautics engineers to check and test the aircraft. These engineers agreed to test it for a price that was agreed upon by the Burkinabe government. But guess what? The very next day after the agreement had been made, these guys resigned. Why? They said that they wanted more money. Specifically, they said they wanted 3 million CFA franc in addition to what had already been agreed. Isn't that greedy? Anyways, President Traore sent some people to negotiate with these engineers and even offered to add money, although not up to the 3 million CFA franc. But despite all these engineers refused, insisting that the 3 million CFA franc must be paid. Tell me, isn't that the height of greediness? It's even more painful because these people are fellow Burkinabe citizens. They ought to have understood that the country is in a right corner and Traore is trying to manage resources. Besides, as patriotic citizens, shouldn't they be excited to work on the very first aircraft that their country managed to purchase? Well, their greed did not let them do their job, and Traore decided to take action. He said, "This is unpatriotic and the government is not going to negotiate anymore, but you are going to do the job regardless." In simple terms, Traore decided to force them to do the job. Now, some people may say that this action of Traore is harsh and it doesn't fit democracy. Well, Traore is a military man and he runs a military government. In our opinion, Traore's action is the best in this situation. You see, sometimes leaders need to take decisive actions that may seem harsh, but overall, it's for the benefit of the country. Some people may not understand this, and that is why they might call Traore a dictator. This situation brings to mind what happened in Burkina Faso a few weeks ago. You see some of those Burkinabe politicians who prefer a civilian government so that they can comfortably enjoy power and loot public funds have been demanding for election in Burkina Faso. These politicians say that Traore is using the insecurity in Burkina Faso as a guise not to organize elections. But according to them, the insecurity is not so serious that an election cannot be conducted and the civilian government returned. Guess what Traore did? Traore said, "Since you think that the insecurity is not so serious and you think I'm trying to hold on to power, why not go to the war front?" Yes, you heard right. President Traore put weapons in their hands and sent them to join the military. As expected, Western media has called this action suppression of free speech. Well, they can call it whatever they like, but the fact is that Traore remains the best thing to have ever happened to Burkina Faso. His actions might seem dictatorial, but overall, his motive and plan are to give Burkina Faso security and development. Traore's actions are exactly what a strong leader would do, and Africa needs strong leaders. In recent times, there are two African leaders who have taken strong decisions like President Traore. They are Senegalese President Faye and Mali's President Assimi Goïta. Let's start with President Faye. When President Faye came to power, He made a lot of promises to the people of Senegal. However, according to Faye, he has not been able to fulfill any of these promises because of certain people. So, he decided to make a monumental decision that has made some Senegalese politicians despise him. One of Faye's promises is to rehabilitate the institutions of the republic and restore the state based on the rule of law, something he says was flouted by Macky Sall. In addition to this, he stated that he intends to fight against what he calls hyper-presidentialism, which he says has led to the executive arm of government having excessive control over the legislative and judicial branches, resulting in manipulating justice to target and imprison political opponents. To this end, Faye promises to limit the powers of the president, introduce impeachment, prohibit the accumulation of political mandates, fight corruption, and introduce alternatives to imprisonment. Also, President Faye promised to reclaim the sovereignty of Senegal by renegotiating mining and hydrocarbon contracts that are set to take effect this year. He also planned to reassess fishing agreements with foreign countries because the fish resources that have been supporting over 600,000 Senegalese have been dwindling as a result of plundering from European and Asian trawlers. In addition to these, Faye promised to develop the primary sector to ensure food security and move towards self-sufficiency, notably the staple of rice. However, the president recently revealed that the reason for the delay in fulfilling the pledge is as a result of the Senegalese parliament. You see, some of Faye's promises, which include a complete institutional reform, reducing the number of government ministries, abolishing the post of prime minister, and creating a vice presidency, all require parliamentary approval. However, Faye's political party, PASTF, does not hold a majority in the Parliamentary Assembly, and according to Faye, this has made it difficult for him to execute the promised reforms. In June, for instance, the opposition coalition canceled a budgetary debate in a dispute over whether Sonko was required to issue his government's policy roadmap, with him arguing that he was not required to. President Faye also revealed that working with the assembly had grown difficult after members refused to start discussions on the budget law and rejected efforts to dissolve wasteful state institutions. So, as a result of this, President Faye decided to take a tough decision. But what did he do? Faye decided to dissolve the opposition-led parliament and pave the way for a snap election. Speaking on state television, President Faye stated that, "I dissolved the National Assembly to ask the sovereign people for the institutional means to bring about the systemic transformation that I have promised to deliver." Faye also added that legislative elections will be conducted on November 17th. Those who support President Faye applaud the decision and view the dissolution as an opportunity to overcome a current impasse on advancing his program. However, Faye's decision has been met with criticism, particularly from the opposition. The Benno Bokk Yakaar opposition platform led by former President Macky Sall condemned the move. It said Faye had convened a legislative session under pretenses to announce the dissolution and accused him of perjury. But regardless of what they say, President Faye's move is necessary for him to fulfill the promise he has made to the people. As we said, Mali's president has also made a tough decision in recent times. Like Traore, Colonel Assimi Goïta has been trying to reclaim his country's gold mining industry. You see, Mali's mining industry has been dominated by Western companies for a long time, and these companies have profited massively at the expense of Mali. These companies exploit Mali's raw gold at a cheap price, transport the raw gold to their factories in their countries, process it into finished products, and sell the products at ridiculously expensive rates. And, through it all, Mali is battling with insecurity and poverty. However, Colonel Assimi Goïta decided to change how things have been done. To do this, he decided to introduce a new mining code. This code increased the government's stake in mining fields from 20% to 35%, and tax exemptions from all mining companies. This new mining code had the potential to boost the national budget by $820 million, as well as the country's GDP. But guess what? These greedy companies that have been profiting massively at the expense of Mali refused to heed the code. According to them, the mines they are exploiting should be subject to the previous code, which was in force at the time of their commissioning. So, as a result of their refusal, the implementation of the code was stalled for months until Colonel Assimi decided to take drastic action. Firstly, the military junta made it known that the new mining code was not up for debate. So, it is either they take it or leave the country. Of course, these companies would not want to leave the country due to the massive gains they are getting. So, the president of Mali decided to do something drastic. He began to apply pressure on these companies by arresting officials from the companies. He first arrested 3 employees of Barrick Gold, one of the mining companies, last month, and then he arrested the CEO and 3 officials of Resolute Mining earlier this month. Guess what? He got the results he was looking for. Barrick Gold agreed to increase Mali's economic benefit to 50%, while Resolute Mining agreed to pay the tax debt it owed Mali. So, you can see why Africa needs strong leaders. With strong leaders who can make tough decisions for the benefit of their countries regardless of what the West thinks, Africa will be a better place. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.